All right, I think we're going to get started. If you want to take a seat, there's some great seats up in front here. Come on up here if you want a good seat in front of all the action. So, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Minnesota Judicial Center. It's really a pleasure to be with you today to celebrate the 30th anniversary of this beautiful building. For those of you I haven't met, my name is Jeff Shorba, and I have the honor of serving as Minnesota's State Court Administrator. So we've gathered here today to mark a very special milestone, not just for this building, but for the Minnesota Judicial Branch. 30 years ago, in 1995, the dedication ceremony for this building marked the culmination of a decades-long effort to bring our appellate courts, the State Court Administrator's Office, and the Law Library together under one roof right here on the Capitol Mall. This location, just steps away from the state capitol, has served as both a physical and a symbolic home for our work. It reflects the role of the judiciary as a co-equal branch of government and has provided really the foundation for 3 decades of innovation, service, and transformation. We're so pleased to have you with us to celebrate this occasion. After our program concludes, we invite you to stay for refreshments, take a self-guided tour of the building, visit our exhibit on display in the State Law Library downstairs. But to begin today's program, it is really my privilege to introduce someone whose leadership continues to shape the future of our courts. Please join me in welcoming the Chief Justice of the Minnesota Supreme Court, Chief Justice Natalie Hudson.
Good afternoon to everyone. Good afternoon. Boy, it's so good to see this room so full. Really, really good, and just wonderful to see old faces, old friends. So thank you, and thank you, Jeff, for that welcome and introduction. But good afternoon to everyone. I too am really, really happy to be here with you today to celebrate the 30th anniversary of the Minnesota Judicial Center. This place holds such deep meaning for so many of us, not just to those of us, though, who work here, but to the entire Minnesota Judicial Branch and to the people we serve across the state. When this building was formally dedicated in 1995, it wasn't just the end of a construction project, it was the beginning of a new chapter for the Minnesota Judicial Branch. And I'm going to stop right there because I did say formally dedicated in 1995. Somebody has already approached me. Where are you, Judge Kalatowski? He's somewhere right there. And we had this discussion. I told Judge Kalatowski, we had this discussion. He goes, what do you mean 1995? I was here physically in the building in 1990. And I know. I think that's when the groundbreaking was, maybe, or something was happening here in 90, but it wasn't actually dedicated, Judge Kalatowski, until 1995. And again, that was really the beginning for the judicial branch. For the first time in our history, the branch had a permanent, unified home, a building that physically and symbolically placed the judiciary alongside the legislative and executive branches at the heart of our state government. And that location matters. It matters because being right here on the Capitol Mall within the site of the state capitol sends a powerful message, as Jeff alluded to, that the judicial branch is an essential, co-equal partner in our democracy. That justice is not abstract or distant, but grounded and visible and rooted in the very center of civic life in the state of Minnesota. But this building is more than a symbol of structure and co-equality. It's also a promise that the law belongs to the people of the state of Minnesota, that justice will be open and that justice will be accessible, that those who enter these doors, whether it's litigants, attorneys, public servants, or members of the public, will be treated with fairness, dignity, and respect. And in the 30 years since this building was dedicated, it has been the foundation for some of the most transformative changes in the history of our state court system. From this building, We led the transition to full state funding for the courts, bringing equity and stability and accountability to how justice is administered across Minnesota. We unified our trial courts, ensuring that people receive the same level of service and the same quality of justice no matter where they live in our state. We created the Minnesota Judicial Council, a visionary model for statewide court governance that has allowed us to plan strategically and speak with one voice and respond quickly to emerging needs. We built eCourt Minnesota and moved into the digital era, converting paper records into electronic files, expanding remote access and court services, and modernizing our operations from the inside out. We've embraced innovation at every level. We've re-engineered how court work gets done. We've adopted new technologies to improve efficiency, access, and communication. And we've reimagined what it means to deliver justice in a connected, fast-changing world. We've developed a new statewide framework for hearings. We've improved our support for self-represented litigants. And we've expanded language access and embraced community partnerships that bring our justice system closer to the people it serves. And we've done all this while navigating extraordinary challenges. Economic downturns, as just one example. And of course, we've had a global pandemic, workforce transitions, and many, many more. But through it all, we've never wavered in our commitment to serve the people of Minnesota with resilience, with compassion, and with integrity. And today, the Minnesota Judicial Branch is widely regarded as one of the most effective, innovative, accessible, and well-managed court systems in the country. That did not happen by accident. It happened because we were grounded, both literally and figuratively, in the values that this building represents. It happened because we had a home that allowed us to work together, to face forward, and to move boldly into the future. This is a place where Minnesota's justice system found its voice. This is where we came together as judges and staff and administrators and leaders to build something better. And this is where we will continue to grow and evolve in service to the people of our state. And so today, we don't just celebrate a building, we celebrate 30 years of impact, 30 years of progress and innovation and collaboration and public service. And we offer our deepest thanks, and as Chief Justice in particular, I offer my deepest thanks to all of those seated in this room who have played integral parts over the years to make the branch what it is and to make this Judicial Center what it is. And so to all of the visionaries who imagined this place, thank you. And to the leaders who fought to bring it to life, thank you. And to the staff who have sustained it day in and day out, and by staff I mean certainly all the staff present here today, but all of our janitorial staff, everybody who makes this place what it is so that we can continue to serve the people of Minnesota. And to the people of Minnesota who have entrusted us with this vital work, I extend my thanks. So thank you for being a part of this legacy, for all that you have done. As I look around this room and I see so many faces of people who have played such pivotal roles, and you're going to hear from a few of those folks this afternoon yet today, but there are many, many more, and so thank you. And thank you for what I know you will all continue to do to move justice forward in Minnesota. It is an honor to share in this celebration with all of you. And I would be remiss also if I didn't recognize, I know the governor himself couldn't be here, but I see members of the governor's staff here. Thank you for all of you being here today as well. So thank you with that, and I'm going to turn it back over to Jeff. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you, Chief Justice. So our next speaker is someone who really helped lay the foundation we're celebrating today. Sue Dosal served as Minnesota's State Court Administrator for more than 30 years, from 1982 to 2012. And she led the branch through some of the many innovations that you have heard Chief Justice Hudson speak about. And on a personal note, I had the pleasure of serving as Sue's deputy for a decade, 10 years, and I really learned so much about leadership, integrity, and public service. And she really led that example for so many people in this room. Her legacy leads on sort of not just in the building, but really in the systems, values, and people that continue to move our courts forward every day. So please join me in welcoming Sue Dosal.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Jeff, for that very kind introduction and for the invitation to join in this wonderful celebration of a truly monumental achievement. I'm happy to be here, as I expected that Justice Anderson and I would probably be among the last left standing who actually attended that 1995 dedication. But I look around this room and it's like a reunion. And there are so many people here that I spent years and toiled with, and it's so great to see you here. I wanted to just start by saying that the road from that, or to that 1995 dedication was really an arduous one, lasting 8 decades with political conflict, with infighting, many legislative hurdles, and there were certainly moments of drama. It all began with Cass Gilbert's original vision for the Capitol complex, which included a concept with the judicial building in it. And in 1913, the legislature passed, actually appropriated $400,000 for a building to house both the Supreme Court and the Historical Society. But that was a great plan until the Historical Society folks, people that had very strong political connections across the state, decided that they didn't want to share the space. So in 1915, legislation passed removing the Supreme Court from the project. Well, over the following decades, planning for a court building fell by the wayside. There were new attempts in the 1960s and again in the 1970s, and they never gained traction. But finally, after the constitutional amendment creating the Court of Appeals passed on November 2nd, 1982, the time was right for a new push. So, as Jeff mentioned, I was appointed the State Court Administrator in July of that year, and my first assignment was to join Chief Justice Amdahl's army of hundreds campaigning for that constitutional amendment. Well, the very next morning, after it passed overwhelmingly, he told us that there's no time to celebrate. Our next campaign was for the judicial building. And he envisioned this building, not just for the appellate courts, but as has been mentioned, as the home of the entire statewide judiciary on the Capitol Mall. He thought it should be called the Minnesota Judicial Center, and of course it was a name that stuck throughout the 12 years it took to construct this building and then beyond, obviously. Our first step was to secure approval of a bonding request for $100,000 for a space needs and site selection study. I remember well, very late on one of the last nights of that session. Its fate was uncertain. The conference committee had recessed, members had gone behind closed doors, and I knew that I needed help. Well, then I spotted in the Capitol Rotunda Peter Popovich. So just the week before, he had been named by the governor as the chief judge of the soon-to-be-created Court of Appeals. As many of you know, he was a former legislator, a prominent lawyer, and an influential lobbyist. So I went up and introduced myself to him, and I asked him, well, do you suppose you could possibly try to contact the committee chair or the senior members of that committee? And he said, well, he would try. Well, literally, and really, I'm not exaggerating, 5 minutes later, he returns and he says, it's done. And, and we had gotten our request and we were off to an auspicious beginning. Well, the next step was to select a site for the proposed building. Leonard Parker's nationally renowned Minneapolis architectural firm was hired to do our space needs and site selection study. Parker, as many of you will remember, was short in stature, but he's big in confidence in his own architectural judgments. His firm studied 10 locations around the capital area, including the Historical Society site. By 1982, the Historical Society was in need of more space, and in fact had already received legislative approval for renovating this historic building and then adding a large expansion behind it, which was on the site of the vacated Mechanics Arts High School. The society and the executive director, Russ Fridley, were a political force to be reckoned with. And I can tell you that they were adamant in staying in that location. Chief Justice Amdahl and his right-hand man on the judicial building, this was Justice Larry Yetka. The two of them were just knew that they shouldn't get into a fight with the Historical Society because the court would probably be the loser again. And they also thought that perhaps that it would jeopardize any chance that they would have for getting a building. So they assured Fridley that the court would not go after that location or disrupt their plans that were already underway. Our site recommendation report to the legislature a few months later identified 4 preferred sites. Respecting the agreement with the Historical Society, the Supreme Court and the Court of Appeals' strong recommendation was for the Cass-Gilbert Park to the north and east, way up on the knoll, overlooking the Capitol, right behind us. In our presentation to the 1984 House Appropriations Committee, a question was asked as to why the Historical Society site had not been considered the best location. Well, Leonard Parker said that, well, it actually was their first choice, but per the agreement between the courts and the society, it was unavailable. Representative Dave Bishop, a member of that committee, a lawyer, a great supporter of the courts generally and of the judicial building in particular, then asked the rhetorical question, well, whose decision is this, the judges or the legislature? So that afternoon, Representative Bishop takes a stroll around the Capitol Mall, and he says that he, as he describes it, he looks to the east and he sees that legislative building, and in the center he sees the Capitol, and the west, and in the east he sees a building with Roman columns looking very much like a courthouse. So that was the beginning of his personal quest to designate the Historical Society for the judicial branch. Bishop then persuades key members of his committee to join him in meeting with Russ Fridley, the Historical Society director here, in his office, which is right above us, where the clerk's office is today. And during that meeting, Representative Bishop stands up and looks out at those big windows towards the Capitol, and Russ Fridley asks him, well, what are you looking at? And he said, well, I'm just imagining that I'm Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. So next, the Bishop delegation met with Governor Rudy Perpich to make their case for the courts taking over the Historical Society site. They actually persuaded the governor to change his position from supporting the Historical Society on that site to putting the court building there instead. Well, great news for Bishop. until the next morning when he hears that the night before, Justice Yeka and Judge Popovich had had dinner with the governor and had gotten him to change his mind and to now support the strong desire of the courts for an all-new building up there on the mall, up there on the mall, on the knoll. So Bishop, in a panic, then rushes to meet the governor, and he asks him, "Well, Governor, do you think the court building up there on the knoll overlooking the Capitol should be higher than the Capitol? And do you really want the Chief Justice looking down on you?" Well, apparently the governor ponders for a moment and then says, "Good point." And the deal was struck. In 1984, legislature appropriated $400,000 for a national jury design competition, and of course had designated this site for the judicial branch. In April of 1985, a year later, a 14-person jury selects the Leonard Parker and Associates firm as the project architect. Well, this construction effort would take a total of 7 years and was broken into phases with a series of subsequent funding requests. Phase 1 was completed in 1990, and it encompassed that new construction behind the historic building. And interestingly, it included a 1% for art funded skylight above the grand staircase right up here. Actually, that skylight was originally named the Whitewater, which was that until a political controversy involving the same name, you will remember, involving Bill and Hillary Clinton, was all over the news, and so quite quickly and quietly it was renamed Falling Water. So after 75 years of waiting, we celebrated this dedication of this entire complex on May 11th, 1995. It was a joyous day that included all 4 living Chief Justices, the first and second Chief Judge of the Court of Appeals, and U.S. Supreme Court Justice Harry Blackmun, a Minnesota native, and a graduate of the Mechanics Arts High School. Well, Leonard Parker spoke that day of the honor of being associated with the creation of the Minnesota Judicial Center, knowing that it would be part of Minnesota history, but not just because of its physical presence and architecture, but also, as he said, because of the noble work that would be housed there. He also admitted that his firm had had a few serious moments of trepidation about their charge, because he said justices and judges can be intimidating people. Deserved or not, he said, they are perceived as autocratic, opinionated, judgmental, and sometimes about subjects they know little about, like aesthetics and function and building technology. But he went on, and certainly got a big laugh that day, I'll tell you, but he went on to say that his fears were unfounded because the justices, judges, and court staff were great collaborators, and they challenged the architects to do their very best. My last memory of that day was of Representative Bishop, always an exuberant personality, who may have been especially carried away that day by this historic moment when he told several of us that when he died, he wanted his ashes spread over the Judicial Center Plaza. Well, having worked in this magnificent building for another 17 years, I can testify to what we already heard today, that this not only is a beautiful and functional building, but its very physical presence on the Capitol Mall truly inspired a new respect for the judiciary as a co-equal branch of government that I, for one, tangibly felt in our interactions with the governor and the staff, the legislature, the media, and the public. So in closing, let me just thank all of you for the opportunity to remember and to celebrate this historic achievement. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. So our final speaker today is somebody who really brought both wisdom and humanity to his many years on the bench. Justice Paul Anderson was appointed to the Court of Appeals in 1992 and then to the Minnesota Supreme Court in 1994. He served on our highest court for nearly 2 decades, helping to shape the law in many profound ways and authoring many important decisions. And we are very anxious to have him here because we understand he has a unique perspective. As Sue said, he was around during those times that we really do need to hear. So please join me in welcoming Justice Paul Anderson.
Jeff only gave me 5 minutes, so I can't tell you all the stories. I will back up Kalatowski. One of the first cases heard in the courtroom here was the election case between Perpich and Carlson. My whole career depended upon that decision that was heard and rendered here. But I am kind of a footnote or an asterisk to the whole proceeding. I can tell you all kinds of, by the way, I can tell you some of the defects in the design of the building. I'll just cite one. Those of you who are served as clerks, they designed the building before PCs. Your situation does not accommodate what is happening right now. But I'm going to talk about something that's very special that happened at that dedication ceremony. And it ties into Minnesota history. It goes way back to the mid-19th century. Deals with Little Crow and the uprising in August and September of 1862. Little Crow lost. It was a five-week war, but it was pretty bloody. And it was very high opinions and animosity going on. Well, at Wood Lake, Little Crow lost. He tried to rally his forces. He came back into the state, and on July 3rd, 1863, he was shot and killed in a farmer's field out in Hudson. His body was identified. He was exhumed from the grave. He was dragged through the streets of Hutchinson, and the Historical Society took possession of his body and his remains. And this is why it's important we talk about. They displayed Little Crow's remains in the state capitol until 1915. Finally, they got removed. He was a revered leader of the Mendewakan Dakota. Finally, they got him out of the capitol, but where did they take him? Right here, the History Center. And so now we move forward. This building is going to be part of the judiciary. Yeah, some of you know Jim Randall, connection with the Native American community. A delegation came and talked to Randall and said, you know, that is not a good place for the court to be. That building is tainted. It's got a very bad history. And it related the story about Little Crow displaying his body, keeping the bones here, and said, you can't go into that building. So Randall came up to me and said, Paul, there's no way we can stop it. We've got to do something. I said, what do? We're going to have a Dakotas come here and purify the building before we move in. So I go up to Sandy Keith, and I propose this. Well, you know Sandy, some of you do. I did not get a good response. Sandy, you know, worked in Rochester with Harry Blackman. He got Blackman to come. He was so proud of this building. He got Blackman here, and Blackman was an easy thing because Blackman went to Mechanic Heights, and so it's going to be, Paul, you can't do it. Turned down. I went to Randall. I said, he's not going to do it. You knew what he was going to do. Well, keep at it. So then I go to my colleague, Esther Tomjanovich. Oh, I love Esther. She is. I knew she would be on my side. Then I went to Stringer, whose son was an attorney for the Native Americans in New Mexico. Yeah, that sounds like a good idea. Well, then I went to Page, Easy Sell, And so, and then I guarded me. So I'd circled the wagons on Sandy Key and said, we got to purify the building. And you got to go on. No, you're not going to do it. We're going to do it. And see, and he was concerned. He says, because Native Americans have a different concept of time sometimes than what we Anglos do. He said, you can't do that. It's going to disrupt the whole thing. I'll keep it to 5 minutes. I'm speaking of time. And so then I got Esther to go to Sandy. Paige went. And finally, we got him to agree that after the dedication ceremony, we would have a Dakota holy man and his assistant purify the building, and there'd be a smoking of a peace pipe. The picture of that was on the front page of the paper the next day. It was that dedication and purification of this building. And I think of that often because I love this building. I'm working here, and we got off to a good start, and we expunged that bad memory of history. Now, the picture, I tried to get, I'm here a little late today. We're selling a house after 50 years. It's crazy, but anyway. The picture is down in the library. I thought I was going to be able to get it, but it's not where I normally saw it. But it's a picture of Justice Harry Blackman smoking a peace pipe. And he's surrounded by all the chiefs, incumbent and former, as they smoked the pipe and purified this building. There's one chief that's missing from that. I'm not in the picture. Sandy Keith wouldn't let me be there. He was so mad at me for doing this ceremony, but it turned out to be so good. I mean, it gave this building a pure start for the judiciary, and I think that it was so important. So when you think of this building, think of it had a bit of a tainted history, but we purified it when we started, and I'm so pleased we did. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you, Justice Anderson. So we've learned a couple things from Justice Anderson. One is retirement helps with timekeeping, so that's good. And secondly, you'll now have something to take on your tour to Law Library. I'm sure you can ask Liz where that picture is. I have never seen it either, so she probably has a great idea. So we want to thank all of you for coming. It's been a great turnout. We want you to stay. There's cake and other refreshments down in the Law Library. There's self-guided tours that you can find from your book. Find time to visit with people you haven't seen in a long period of time, because this is, as Sue said, a little bit of a reunion. So thank you so much for coming. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Thanks.